It was a day meant to radiate joy, a celebration of love shared between two souls united in the sacred bond of marriage. Laughter filled the air, and warmth surrounded everyone as family and friends came together to celebrate the union of Malik Dillard, a man admired for his achievements, integrity, and unwavering love for his bride, Ayanna Willis. She was a picture of grace and beauty, standing beside him as the perfect counterpart, admired by all who knew them. The scene was picturesque, an embodiment of happiness and unity. Traditions rooted in African American culture enriched the ceremony, bringing layers of depth and significance to the day. To those in attendance, it was a wedding to remember, a symbol of elegance and celebration. Yet beneath the joyful smiles and the facade of perfection, there lingered a truth hidden in shadows. Unbeknownst to the guests cheering for Malik and Ayanna's future, a storm was brewing, one that would transform this day of happiness into a night of tragedy. Appearances, after all, can be deceiving, and the joy that filled the day would soon begin to unravel, revealing secrets that could shake the very foundation of trust and love. As the evening unfolds, the perfect image begins to shatter, and the true nature of this union is revealed, leading to consequences no one could have anticipated. Her story, however, didn't begin with glittering chandeliers and lavish celebrations. It began in a modest neighborhood where dreams of wealth and security seemed distant and elusive. From an early age, Ayanna Willis knew the harsh realities of the world, the struggle to make ends meet, and the bitter truth that love alone couldn't fill an empty stomach or provide a stable home. These early struggles shaped her ambitions, sparking within her a relentless drive to escape the limits of her upbringing and secure a life where financial stability would no longer be a worry. This hunger for a better life drove her choices, including the pivotal decision to pursue Malik Dillard, a man who symbolized everything she had ever wanted. When Ayanna met Malik, it wasn't love at first sight, but rather a calculated realization of what he could offer. He was established, respected, and wealthy, the kind of man who could bring her the stability she craved. Seeing in him not only a partner, but also a provider, Ayanna set her sights on him, confident that with the right moves, she could secure a life of comfort and prosperity. Their meeting seemed almost like fate, a chance encounter that quickly grew into a relationship. Yet, for Ayanna, it was never just about attraction. While Malik was a handsome man with a kind smile and gentle demeanor, it was what he represented that mattered to her, an escape from her past and a gateway to a life of luxury. Ayanna was a master of her role. She knew just how to present herself, how to say all the right things, and how to be exactly the woman Malik needed. To Malik, Ayanna appeared to be the ideal partner, beautiful, supportive, and seemingly as in love with him as he was with her. But beneath it all, Ayanna remained calculating, making sure each step led her closer to the life she longed for. Then there was Nazir Dillard. Unlike Malik, Nazir was less grounded, more of a free spirit, still navigating his path in life. Though he didn't have the stability or success that defined his older brother, Nazir had a magnetic charm and an infectious energy, especially around women. Their first meeting was entirely different from her calculated encounter with Malik. It was spontaneous, electric. Ayanna didn't see Nazir as part of her future, but rather as a temptation, a thrilling escape from her carefully constructed plans. Nazir was the opposite of everything she had envisioned for herself, yet he was irresistible in his own way. There was an undeniable pull between them, a forbidden attraction fueled by the thrill of secrecy. Nazir's allure was dangerous, yet irresistible to Ayanna, a spark that grew into something she couldn't ignore. But over time, this hidden relationship became harder to conceal, and the line between passion and manipulation began to blur. Their affair began innocently, a stolen kiss, quiet conversations in hidden corners where prying eyes couldn't find them. What started as a brief lapse in judgment evolved into something intense, a secret they both became addicted to. Each meeting felt like a test of how close they could walk to the edge without being discovered. Nazir, captivated, was drawn deeper by Ayanna's understanding and allure. But for her, the affair was a delicate balancing act. She knew that letting this relationship surface could ruin everything she'd built with Malik. Yet, she couldn't stop. Nazir provided not only a physical connection but a sense of power. She held sway over both brothers, weaving them into her life as she crafted her future. Ayana took advantage of this affair as a form of control, keeping Nazir close through subtle manipulation, using her charm, wit, and occasional vulnerability to keep him in her orbit. She expertly managed his guilt, making sure he felt just enough shame to stay quiet without pushing him away completely. Their meetings became a careful dance, one where Ayana held all the power. As the wedding day approached, Ayana's plan began to solidify. She was pregnant, a truth that could have shattered everything, but she turned it to her advantage. Though the child wasn't Malik's, she made sure he believed it was, reinforcing his trust and excitement with every passing day. Malik, oblivious to the deception, was overjoyed at the idea of becoming a father. His love for Ayana only deepened with each touch to her belly, each mention of the family they'd soon be building. Blinded by love and trust, he never questioned her story, never noticed the brief moments when her smile faded or her gaze seemed distant. For Malik, this marriage was the beginning of a beautiful future, rooted in love and trust. Little did he know it was built on deceit. As the day of the wedding drew near, Nazir's guilt grew heavier, gnawing at him, threatening to break his silence. He knew that once the vows were exchanged, once they said, "I do," there would be no turning back. The secret he carried would become even more perilous, a ticking bomb that could destroy everything. Ayana, however, grew more determined, her resolve hardening. She had come too far to let anything slip now, not when she was so close to securing the life she'd always dreamed of. She kept Nazir under her control, ensuring he remained in line, though the strain of maintaining this facade began to show in subtle ways. On the morning of the wedding, the sky was bright and clear, a perfect day for what was meant to be the happiest day of Malik's life. Guests arrived in waves, filling the air with laughter and anticipation, completely unaware of the undercurrents brewing beneath the surface. Among them stood Nazir, his heart burdened by a secret capable of tearing this day apart. Watching his brother, radiant with love and joy, Nazir felt an intense weight of guilt mixed with jealousy and regret. The child Ayana carried was his, yet here she was, promising herself to another man, his own brother. Every smile, every embrace between Malik and Ayana cut deep, reminding Nazir of a life he could never claim as his own. As he tried to focus on the celebration, the emotions roared within him, impossible to ignore. Each part of the ceremony, the vows, the rings, the sealing kiss, felt like a cruel mockery, a painful reminder of the secret that had led them all to this point. Nazir stood by his brother's side, playing the role of the supportive sibling, yet inside, he was drowning in a sea of conflicting emotions. How could he stand there, watching his brother unknowingly take on the responsibility of raising his own child? The thought clawed at him, filling him with a twisted mix of anger, sadness, and helplessness. Meanwhile, Malik remained blissfully unaware. Filled with love and anticipation, he greeted guests with warmth and gratitude, each smile an affirmation of his happiness. To him, this was the culmination of his dreams, the moment he had longed for, the beginning of a new life built with Ayana by his side. Every handshake, every hug felt like a confirmation of the joy he believed he was stepping into. He looked at Ayana often, his gaze filled with unwavering affection and the promise of a lifetime together. Malik trusted her completely, seeing no reason to doubt or question. His mind was clear, free of suspicion, his future bright and full of hope. Yet, as Malik floated on this cloud of bliss, he was oblivious to the storm raging in Nazir's heart. He couldn't see the tension in Nazir's posture, the forced nature of his smile, or the lingering glances he cast at Ayana, laden with a mixture of longing and pain. Malik's happiness was so pure, so encompassing, that he missed the signs of disquiet in those closest to him. For him, this day was perfection, unmarred by the hidden turmoil simmering just below the surface. Then there was Ayana, the bride, the architect of this elaborate deception. On the surface, she appeared calm, her face serene as she moved through the day with elegance and composure. She played her role flawlessly, every word and every smile carefully measured to uphold the illusion she had crafted. But beneath her composed exterior, Ayana was fully aware of the tension simmering beneath the surface, a silent chaos that threatened to unravel everything if not carefully managed. Throughout the day, she continued to manipulate both men, keeping them in her grasp. With Malik, it was easy. He was so in love, so blindly trusting that even a reassuring touch or a gentle smile was enough to keep him content. She knew precisely how to act, what to say, to keep his suspicions at bay and fortify the lie she had woven into his heart. Each time Malik gazed at Ayana with adoring eyes, a rush of satisfaction filled her, a sign that her plan was progressing flawlessly. But Nazir was a different challenge. She saw the conflict in his gaze, the turmoil brewing just below the surface, ready to erupt at any moment. He was restless, struggling with the weight of the situation. She knew she had to keep him calm, to ensure he didn't make any rash decisions that could undo everything she had worked so hard to achieve. Ayana utilized every tool she possessed, her charm, her empathy, and her ability to make Nazir feel both guilty and necessary, all to maintain her control over him. As the day went on, Ayana found quiet moments to talk to Nazir, pretending to be concerned, but, in truth, ensuring he stayed in line. She reminded him of the consequences of revealing the truth, the pain it would cause, not only to Malik, but also to the child they now both had a responsibility to protect. She played on his emotions, leveraging his love for their unborn child as a means to keep him silent, while reassuring him that everything would work out as long as he trusted her and followed her lead. Beneath Ayana's calm exterior was a storm of her own. She knew she was walking a thin line, one wrong move away from disaster, but she was determined to see her plan through, to secure the life she had always envisioned for herself, no matter the cost. Her manipulation was subtle but effective, a careful balance of reassurance and control that kept both men exactly where she needed them to be. The day moved forward seamlessly, a perfect image projected to the world, even as the storm gathered behind the scenes, waiting for the right moment to strike. The reception was everything they had hoped for, an evening filled with laughter, celebrations, and toasts to the future. As the night wore on and guests began to drift away, Ayana could feel the exhaustion weighing down on her. She had played the role of the joyous bride perfectly, maintaining the facade without a crack. Now, as the guests departed and the lights dimmed, fatigue seeped into her bones. She excused herself, leaving Malik to see off the final guests, his smile radiant, oblivious to the turmoil that was about to unfold. Ayana returned to the hotel, her steps heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. She knew that Nazir was nearing his breaking point, that the day's events had pushed him to the edge. She feared what he might do, but she was too exhausted to strategize, too drained to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. All she wanted was a brief moment of peace, a break from the pressures she'd created for herself. As she walked through the quiet halls, a feeling of dread settled over her, a sense of impending disaster that quickened her heartbeat. She entered her room, closing the door with a sigh of relief, savoring the silence as a temporary escape from the chaos of the day. Slowly she moved around the room, her mind spinning with plans on how to manage Nazir, to keep everything from unraveling. She knew he would come. He couldn't stay away, not with everything at stake, and though she dreaded the confrontation, she understood it was unavoidable. There was no more hiding, no more pretending. The truth was close to being exposed, and she had to be ready. Nazir lingered at the reception, his gaze following Ayana as she slipped away. His heart pounded as the evening wore on, every moment a painful reminder of the lie he was living, the secret he was keeping from his brother, the one who trusted him most. He'd tried to keep his emotions at bay, to suppress the guilt that weighed on him, but as the night progressed, the burden became unbearable. Watching Malik, still full of laughter and joy, Nazir felt a surge of anger mixed with sorrow. How could he stand by, watching his brother deceived, as his own child was about to be raised by another man? The decision came suddenly, a moment of steely resolve. He could no longer keep quiet. He had to confront Ayana, demand answers, and understand what was to become of his child. Driven by this purpose, he made his way toward the hotel, his mind spinning with questions that had no easy answers. He wasn't sure what he would say, or how he would even start, but he knew he had to face her, to confront the reality they'd both created. As Nazir approached the hotel, a familiar knot of dread twisted in his stomach. This was it, the moment that would change everything. He could feel the tension in the quiet hallways, the oppressive silence heightening his sense of foreboding. Each step seemed to take an eternity, his heart pounding louder with each one. He was on the verge of tearing down the illusion that had held their world together, and the weight of that truth made his hands tremble. But there was no going back now. The door was just ahead, the confrontation they'd both been dreading just a few steps away. He paused at the door, his hand hovering inches from the surface, heart racing, adrenaline flooding his veins. For a brief moment, he considered walking away, abandoning the mess they'd created. But the thought of his child, of a life he'd never be a part of, strengthened his resolve. Taking a deep breath, he knocked. Inside, Ayana flinched at the sound, recognizing instantly who it was. Her heart beat faster as she opened the door with a shaky hand. There stood Nazir, his eyes blazing with a mix of determination and fear. She stepped aside, letting him enter, closing the door behind him with a quiet click, sealing them away from the outside world. For a moment, Nazir stood in silence, the tension between them thick, palpable. Then, as if a dam had burst, he spoke, his voice low and strained. "What are we going to do?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but the intensity was unmistakable, his eyes filled with a desperation that matched the storm inside him. "What's going to happen to our child?" Ayana sighed, her shoulders slumping as she tried to find the strength to face him. "Nazir, we've discussed this," she began, her tone calm, almost too calm. "I married Malik for stability, for the life he can provide, for me and for this child. It's too late to change anything now." But her words only fueled Nazir's anger, which had been simmering all night. "Stability?" he repeated bitterly, his voice rising as he took a step toward her. "You're going to let my brother raise my child, and you expect me to just sit back and accept it? How can you ask that of me, Ayana?" The air in the room crackled with tension as their argument intensified, their voices growing louder, more heated with each exchange. Nazir's frustration boiled over, his love for his child at odds with his loyalty to his brother. He wanted to protect his child, to be present for them, but he was caught in a web of betrayal, love, and loyalty that had no easy escape. The situation Ayana had crafted left Nazir feeling cornered, trapped with no way to escape. The thought of another man, even his own brother, taking his place in his child's life was unbearable. Ayana, for her part, tried to keep her composure, but the strain was beginning to surface. "Do you think this is easy for me?" she retorted, her voice quivering with emotion. "I'm doing what I have to do to survive, to secure a future for this child. Don't you understand? We made our choices, Nazir, and now we have to live with them." But Nazir barely heard her words, his anger overwhelming him. "And what about me? What about our child? Do we mean nothing to you?" His voice cracked, raw with hurt, cutting through the tension between them like a blade. He was desperate, pleading for her to see his side, to find a way out of the tangled web they had woven. But Ayana's resolve was unwavering. She had come too far to let everything fall apart now. "It's too late," she murmured, her voice barely audible over Nazir's heavy breaths. "There's no going back." The room sank into a tense silence, her words weighing heavily in the air. Nazir's mind whirled, his emotions a chaotic blend of anger, fear, and hopelessness. He had sought answers, a solution, but instead found only more questions, more uncertainty. The walls seemed to close in on him, the reality of their situation pressing down with a suffocating force. Their confrontation left him no peace, no resolution, only a growing sense of helplessness. Meanwhile, Malik had just finished bidding farewell to the last guests, and he made his way upstairs, eager to join his new bride and savor the first quiet moments of their marriage. As he walked down the hallway, A faint smile lingered on his face, his mind brimming with dreams of their shared future. But as he neared the door, he heard raised voices, a heated argument emanating from within the room. He stopped in his tracks, his hand hovering just inches from the door, and a chill of dread crept over him. Though muffled, the tone was unmistakable. There was tension, anger, and desperation. His heart raced as he strained to listen. He recognized the voices, Ayana's, filled with a mix of frustration and resignation, and Nazir's, thick with anger and pain. The terrible realization that something was deeply wrong settled over him like a weight, yet he couldn't bring himself to interfere. Instead, he leaned closer, hoping to make sense of the words drifting through the door. As the conversation continued, Malik's world slowly began to unravel. Each overheard word struck him like a dagger, each one carving away at the life he thought he knew. Nazir's desperate questions about what would happen to his child, the very child Malik believed to be his own, hit him hard. He heard Ayana's admission. She had married him not out of love, but for the stability he could provide. In those few heart-wrenching moments, the betrayal lay bare before him, sinking in with every passing second. Malik stood frozen, his breath shallow and ragged as the weight of the truth bore down on him. His legs threatened to give way, his mind reeling with the implications of what he had just uncovered. The woman he cherished, the brother he trusted, they had conspired together, lied to him, shattering the very foundation of his life. He had been deceived in the cruelest way, and the future he had dreamed of was a mere illusion. Rooted to the spot, he continued listening to the heated exchange inside. Every word, every accusation, every desperate plea for understanding felt like a knife twisting deeper into his heart. He couldn't bring himself to interrupt, couldn't face them, yet. He needed a moment to process the enormity of this betrayal before confronting the two people he had trusted most in the world. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Malik's resolve solidified. He knew he could no longer avoid the inevitable confrontation. Taking a deep breath, he steadied himself, raised his hand, and knocked. The sound echoed through the room, cutting through Ayana and Nazir's argument. Inside, they both froze, the reality crashing down on them. They had been overheard. The soft but firm knock was a signal that the moment of reckoning had arrived. Nazir, his heart pounding, exchanged a fearful glance with Ayana. They knew what was coming, but neither was truly prepared for the devastation they had wrought. Nazir moved slowly toward the door, his hand shaking as he turned the knob and pulled it open. There stood Malik, his face etched with devastation. His eyes met Nazir's, and in that instant, the bond of brotherhood that once felt unbreakable was irrevocably shattered. The pain in Malik's eyes was undeniable, a reflection of the deep, raw wound inflicted upon him. No words, no explanations could ever repair what had been broken. The truth was exposed, and the consequences would be irreversible. As Malik stepped into the room, the full weight of betrayal settled heavily over him, plunging the room into a stifling silence. The confrontation that had begun between Ayana and Nazir now engulfed Malik as well, pulling him into a storm of betrayal and despair. The realization struck him again, stronger than before, and he felt something within him snap. A deep, agonizing fracture that would never truly mend. The woman he loved, the brother he had trusted, they had destroyed him. Standing there, the enormity of their deceit washed over him, and he knew that his life would never be the same. Malik stood in the room, his world crumbling as the full weight of betrayal closed in like an oppressive blanket. The love and trust he had cherished for Ayana and Nazir were replaced by a storm of sorrow, blinding rage, and an overwhelming sense of loss. His heart, once filled with hope and joy, now felt heavy, shattered into pieces. He looked at them, his wife, his brother, the two people he had held above all others, and saw them as they truly were, betrayers, destroyers of the life he had so carefully built. The reality of their deceit was unbearable, and he felt himself breaking under the weight. How could they do this? How could they shatter everything he had held sacred? Malik's mind spun, struggling to process the chaos unleashed upon him. Every moment he had shared with Ayana, every promise he had made, every dream for their future, all of it was a lie, a cruel joke at his expense. The love that once defined his life was now the source of his deepest agony, and he couldn't escape the suffocating despair gripping his heart. Overcome by emotion, Malik turned toward Ayana and Nazir, his voice shaking with a mixture of fury and heartbreak. "How could you do this to me?" he demanded, his eyes blazing with anguish. "How could you both betray me like this?" Malik's voice trembled as he looked at Ayana and Nazir, the pain in his eyes cutting through the silence like a blade. "I loved you. I trusted you both." His words hung in the air like a sentence, each one heavy with the agony of a man whose life had been ripped apart. Ayana and Nazir stood before him, guilt and shame clear on their faces, but no words could undo the damage they'd caused. The room seemed to close in around them, the walls shrinking as Malik's emotions erupted in a storm of anger and grief. "You were my brother," he shouted at Nazir, his voice breaking under the weight of his sorrow. "How could you do this to me? How could you lie to me day after day, looking me in the eye?" His gaze shifted to Ayana, the woman he had thought was his soulmate. "And you, how could you deceive me like this? How could you make me believe this child was ours, that we had a future together? You've destroyed everything." The confrontation was raw, the emotions overwhelming. Tears filled Malik's eyes as he tried to grasp the depth of the betrayal. Each word he spoke was laced with anguish, each breath he took echoing the heartbreak of a man who had lost everything. The tension in the room grew unbearable, the air thick with the unspoken reality that nothing would ever be the same. The tension reached a boiling point, emotions spiraling out of control as the confrontation took on a life of its own. In the midst of the turmoil, a tragic, irreversible moment unfolded. A single action that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. Malik, overcome by his grief and anger, made an impulsive, desperate move, one that led to devastating consequences. In a surge of fury, Malik lunged at Nazir, his pain driving him to the edge. Chaos erupted, the sounds of their struggle echoing through the room, and then, in one split second, it happened. A tragic accident, a moment of catastrophe no one could have foreseen. Nazir fell, collapsing to the floor as his life slipped away in an instant. Ayana's scream pierced the air as she rushed to Nazir's side, but it was too late. The damage was done and there was no going back. Malik stood frozen, his mind reeling as he slowly began to process the gravity of what he had done. The room fell into an eerie silence, the weight of the tragedy bearing down on them like a crushing force. What had started as a celebration had now become a nightmare, the consequences of their actions sealing their fates. In the aftermath, a haunting silence filled the room, broken only by Ayana's heart-wrenching sobs as she cradled Nazir's lifeless body. Malik stood there, his mind numb, his heart shattered beyond repair. Their lies, their betrayals had brought them all to this irreversible point, a moment that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. What had once been bonds of love and trust were now fractured beyond repair, each of them scarred by the events of that night. The room, once a space filled with promises of a new beginning, had become a tomb of broken dreams and shattered lives. Malik, Ayana, and Nazir had all paid the price for their secrets, their betrayals, and their deceptions. There would be no redemption, no turning back. The impact of that night would follow them forever, a lasting reminder of the devastating power of lies and the fragility of trust. As the video draws to a close, we are left to reflect on the events that transpired, the choices that were made, the secrets that were kept, and the lives that were shattered as a result. The story of Malik, Ayana, and Nazir stands as a stark reminder of the destructive force of betrayal and the tragic consequences that can arise when trust is broken. What is the price of deception? How far can lies go before they unravel, pulling everything down with them? These are the questions that linger in the wake of this tragedy, questions that compel us to confront the darker sides of human nature. The choices we make, the secrets we hold, each one has the potential to shape not only our lives, but the lives of those we care about. In the end, we are left to ponder the moral implications of their actions, to consider the profound toll that betrayal and deception can take on our souls. Trust is a fragile bond, and once broken, it may never fully mend. The story of Malik, Ayana, and Nazir serves as a testament to this truth, a cautionary tale of love, betrayal, and the tragic outcome of secrets held too long. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel for more content that delves into the complexities of human relationships, the moral dilemmas we face, and stories that remind us of the challenges and emotions that define us all.